Good to have everybody with us this morning. Thank you for your worship so far today. It's been awesome praising God with you. I love taking communion together with you. It's been a good morning so far, hasn't it? Are you glad you're here this morning? Me too. We're going to continue talking about life hacks today. As a matter of fact, this is going to wrap up our series on going through these different life hacks. And if you haven't been with us, maybe you've seen life hacks on the internet before. Maybe you've Googled some of them before. It's tips, it's tricks, it's words of advice, it's things you can do to make your life easier, to make your life more convenient, to make a certain aspect of your life even better. And so we've demonstrated a few of those things. Just by show of hands, has anybody tried the iPhone with the toilet paper roll speaker at your office? No one. All right. I'm glad that was so beneficial and helpful for everybody. I'll give you one more that I didn't do today. I don't know if it would have been a fire hazard or part of the issue was we didn't have any spaghetti at our house, and so I couldn't do it for you. But apparently, you know when you get those candles that are kind of tall and the wax and the wick are kind of down at the bottom of it, and if you got a lighter or a match, you got to go all the way down there. You're going to burn your fingers, right? Apparently, I haven't tried this yet, so somebody needs to try it and tell me if it works. You can light a piece of spaghetti, that you haven't cooked yet. Light that. It's like a big long. Y'all are laughing. People say it works. You light that, and then you can stick that down in there and light the candle, and that'll work. That way. I don't know. Try it this winter. Trying to light your fireplace. Make sure you got plenty of spaghetti and light it up. I don't know. Somebody try it and let me know if it works or not. But today, I guess all these different weeks we've been talking about these life hacks, and not like tricks to help our office function better or our homes function better, but our own personal lives. My faith in Christ, my relationship with my family, just my own day-to-day routine. Are there ways to do that better? Are there ways to do that in a more healthy way? Are there ways to do that in a way that honors God and blesses other people and blesses me? That's what we've been talking about. And if you've missed any part of this series, I would invite you to go to our YouTube channel and watch some of these and find out maybe some things that would be a blessing to you or to your family. This morning, as has already been said, we're going to be talking about parenting hacks today. Ways to make parenting easier, ways maybe to do parenting better. I have 3 boys in my house. I asked a couple of them what their hacks would be, what their words of advice would be. One said, parents need to make sure that they are instilling, the love of Jesus in their kids, instilling faith in their kids. Now, I don't know if he was just sucking up to me as the preacher, or if he really thinks that. Maybe he really thinks that, and that's what we're trying to do at our house. The other one said, a wise parenting hack: give your kids money. That was his answer. Just give them money. I think again he's angling for something there that is not going to happen, but. Can we do this parenting job better? Can we do it in a way that's a blessing to our kids and in a way that's a blessing to our whole family? And I hope that what I share with you today doesn't come across as being critical at all of any parenting styles and what's going on at your home with your kids. I mean, just in this room, we have so many different stages of parenting represented. I mean, we've got people with just little babies, and then we got toddlers, people with preschoolers, people with elementary kids, people with teenagers. And I've been at those different stages myself. And then we even have people with kids that, are off in college or have just gotten out of college and just trying to start life on their own. And maybe we're kind of getting back into a parenting mode because we're grandparents now. Maybe that's where you're at in life. And then there's people in this room that even may not have kids of their own, but they function as that figure in some young people's lives. I mean, I remember growing up, I had lots of different people that I looked to as that kind of a support. And I had good parents, but I still had some that functioned, a coach or a youth minister that would function kind of as a father figure. I had a couple of different women that I called mom, even though they weren't my mom, because they were such a blessing to me, and they got onto me when I needed to be got onto, and they did nice stuff for me and loved me like one of their own kids. And so we have all those different representations here just in this room. What I'm going to share with you today, you may sit there and go, well, I'm not there yet. And I hope that everybody can glean something out of what we share today. But just understanding the difficulty of being a parent. The difficulty of being a parent. Part of the difficulty comes from it's hard being a kid. And, you know, when they're in their younger stages, when toddlers and preschoolers and stuff like that, I mean, it's hard just to figure out how to walk without running into something. You know, that's a hard part. But as they start getting older, elementary and especially in their teenage years, it is, do you remember being at that age? It's difficult. It was a struggle. And some of us barely made it through. And now we got kids coming up behind us that are going through some of the same struggles. Maybe they look different, maybe they come packaged different, but it's still struggles. And so that's what makes parenting hard, is because being a kid is hard. Think about the things that our kids have to battle with, that we're trying to parent them through. I mean, just with the state of morality and values in our culture nowadays, having to figure out what's right and what's wrong, you know, choosing what's acceptable and what's unacceptable, how to make good choices. I mean, just even learning integrity, just making the right choices and being the right kind of person, even if nobody notices, doing the right thing, even if you won't get caught doing the wrong thing. Those are some of the things that our kids are struggling and will continue to struggle with. They deal on a daily basis with judgment and with bullying. Kids are constantly, kids of all ages are constantly trying to feel accepted by their peers and by other people. And it's not just teens. I know we see that as a teen struggle sometimes, but even preschoolers can feel like outcasts and can be mistreated by other kids. And if I don't, you know, kids think if I don't have the right look, or if I don't live in the right neighborhood, if I don't participate in the right activities, if I'm too fat, if I'm too tall, if I'm too dumb, I'm not accepted. And I'll be treated like I'm not accepted. Not to mention the heightened amount of tension in our culture nowadays surrounding race and gender and all those kinds of things. It's hard to navigate our kids through that. It's hard for them to figure out where they're supposed to fit into all of that. We have teenagers that are becoming addicted to drugs and alcohol while that started when they were in elementary school. We have boys and girls that have become porn addicts by the time they reach puberty. We have kids that are addicted to social media and video games and actually go through withdrawal symptoms when they're not allowed to have those things for a certain amount of time. We have kids that are dealing with fear and with stress. And I know sometimes we look at that and go, how are kids stressed? What do they have to be stressed out about? Their kids. And a lot of kids fear, as I've already said, the bullying and the judgment at their schools and their neighborhoods. And there's kids that stress about not making good scores on their tests and good grades in their classes. There are kids that stress about not making the team or not getting enough playing time on the team that they're on or in the activity that they're a part of. There's a lot of kids that worry about their family. Are my parents going to get divorced? Is my dad going to lose his job? Do my parents even care about me? And a lot of kids are so consumed with looking right and fitting in that they develop eating disorders and they cut themselves and they battle depression even at the elementary age level. We live in a society, I mean, just the struggle for faith for our kids is becoming more and more difficult because we live in a culture, we live in a society where our school systems and our televisions are trying to reinforce the idea that there is no higher power, there is no absolute truth, there is no definite right and wrong. It's all subjective. And kids are made to feel stupid if they say that they believe in a God that they can't see. And they're often nowadays automatically labeled as judgmental and as bigots if they say that they're Christians, that they go to church. I'm not trying to depress us. I know all that I just said is really depressing stuff, and I'm not trying to bring us down or create a state of fear in our hearts this morning. I just want to be real and honest. It's hard for our kids nowadays, which makes it hard for us as parents and coaches and teachers and people who are involved in these kids' lives. It makes it hard for us to help navigate them through that. We struggle we still, as adults, struggle with some of the same things we see our kids struggling with. And how do I help them get through it when I'm still trying to get through it myself? We want our kids to become good citizens. We want them to be good stewards of their finances. And we want them to learn a hard work ethic. And we want them to be good husbands and good wives and good parents. And we want them to be friends that can be trusted and that deal honestly with people. And when it boils down to it, we want people to like our kids, don't we? We just want our kids ultimately to be liked. Not to be popular, but just for people to go, yeah, I like that kid. Yeah, she's a good kid. He's all right. That's what we're shooting for, isn't it? So that people, when our kids' names are mentioned, they'll go, oh, that one. We don't want that. Solomon says it this way in Proverbs chapter 22 and verse 1. He says, a good name is to be chosen rather than great riches, and favor is better than silver or gold. I mean, it's not that we don't want our kids to be successful and have good jobs with good salaries and have lots of stuff and have life better than we had it. But ultimately, even more than that, don't we want our kids to have a good name? Don't we want them ultimately to just be good people? That's what we're shooting for as parents. That's what we want above everything else. And I think that fits whatever stage of parenting we find ourselves in. Whether we have toddlers or preschoolers or elementary kids or teenagers or college agers. Whether we have kids who are having kids. We want our kids to have a good name and to be good people. And have a faith in the God that loves them. So how do we do that? How do we guarantee that happens? I don't know if we can, but I want to share with you some hacks this morning, some tips, some words of advice, some words of wisdom that may help all of us, no matter where we are on this parenting journey, to do that parenting thing a little bit better, to do some things that will help bless our kids and bless our families and help shape them into who we think God wants them to be. I invite you to tap these in your phone, write them down on something, not because they're just mind-boggling concepts, but because it'd be good to remind ourselves. And I would challenge you when you get to, I'm going to give you a list of things that you can be working on. And when you get to the end of the list, don't sit there and go, okay, I got to do all those by tomorrow. Pick one, maybe two. Hey, here's what I'm going to start working on. Here's a gap that I see in my parenting. Let's see if I can work on that this week, okay? So I invite you to really tune in and pay attention, and maybe share some of these things with some other parents that you know. So first parenting hack that I'm going to share with you today is what all of us as parents need to do. We need to create moments. Create moments. Let's see if I can explain that a little better. I can remember maybe a handful of the Christmas presents and the birthday presents that I got growing up. I can remember a handful of them. And those things being, significant or important or that I really liked above some other things. Most of them I can't remember. You know what I do remember of my growing up years? One of the things when I just think about my growing up years, one of the first things that comes to my mind is my dad coming in, if I'm in the living room watching TV or coming in my bedroom just saying, hey, let's go get a Coke. Which meant, let's go get in my truck, let's drive to Hardee's. Let's go in where everybody at this particular Hardee's knew my dad by name, and he knew them by name, and he would say hello to all of them, and they would have almost his order ready when he was walking in from the parking lot. And we would get our tray of food, and maybe it was a full meal, because I like to eat, or maybe it was just the fries and the Coke, or maybe it was just the Coke. But we would go and we would sit back in the back corner of the Hardee's outside of Central Mall in Fort Smith, Arkansas. I remember where we sit. And another thing I remember about it is my dad would get fries, and he would get 6 of those little cups of ketchup. And we would sit down, he would line them up, and he would, I'm going to gross some of you out. He would take the pepper, and he would pepper all of his ketchup cups. And then he would take a fry and dip a fry in each one. And then he would just start talking. Maybe he'd talk about work. Maybe he'd talk about our family. Maybe he asked me about school or different things that were going on. And while we're talking, either while I'm talking or even while he's talking, he's picking up a fry, but he replaces it with another one. And it's just this constant, system. It was amazing to watch. I don't even think he realized that he was doing it. I remember those moments. I remember having some hard conversations with my dad over fries and a Coke. I remember having some really cool conversations with him. And those times have impacted me more than any gift that he ever got me. Does that make sense? It's not that you shouldn't give gifts to your children. It's not that you shouldn't do good things for them, but make sure you're creating moments. You're creating memories. And whether that's trips, whether that's just working on projects around the house, whether that's finding a way to go do something for somebody else in need, maybe it's just practicing an instrument, practicing a sport, whatever it is. Create those moments that they'll remember. Create the moments that they remember. My mom, my dad took time out of their schedule, out of everything that else could be doing. Even if they could go and be taking a nap right now, instead of doing that, they chose to spend time with me. Create moments and then sit back and be amazed at how your relationship with your child grows. Paul says to the church in Philippi, in Philippians chapter 1 and verse 3, as he's starting out this letter to them, he says, I thank my God every time I remember you. I hope this is true for my kids about me. That they're thankful for the things that they remember about me. And every time they remember me, they're thankful for those times and those moments and those memories that we've created. And if I don't think that might be true, that's something I can work on. Let's create moments for and with our kids. Number 2, let's generate trust. Let's generate trust. Let's create a place of trust with our kids and a relationship of trust with them. Kids want to feel secure. They want to feel taken care of. They want to feel safe. So part of that means we do what it takes to make sure that the bills are paid, that there's food on the table. And sometimes that means we sacrifice some fun stuff or buying some things that other people get to have because we can't necessarily afford them. We don't drown ourselves in debt to keep up with everybody else. We make sure that our family is taken care of. You recognize the difference? Make sure that your kids feel safe, that they feel taken care of. Also, you generate trust with keeping your word, with doing what you say you're going to do, with keeping your promises. When you say you're going to be in an activity, when you say you're going to give them a ride somewhere, when you say you're going to do something for them, do that. We want that from them. We have to model that for them. So keep your word with your kids. Create a safe environment for them to be able to share whatever's on their hearts. And there's some of us that we struggle with that. We almost don't want to know exactly what's on their hearts. We worry about what they're going to say to us. We worry about what they're going to share with us. And we might say we want them to share, and then there's part of us that might hesitate a little bit at it. We might feel like this.
Yourself in contempt.
Colonel Jessup, did you order the code red?
You don't have to answer that question.
I'll answer the question. You want answers? I think I'm entitled. You want answers? I want the truth! You can't handle the truth!
See, and that's how we feel, right? I want the truth, and our kids might be saying, you can't handle the truth, We might feel that way. We need to create a relationship and environment where our kids are safe to say whatever they need to say, where they're able to share whatever they need to share. There may be consequences to what they've been doing. There may be consequences to what they share, but they need to know that they can share anything and still be loved and still be accepted. And if we don't create that kind of environment, they're going to go share those things with other people. Or they're going to keep them to themselves and not share at all some things that they might need help with. Jesus, after one of the parables that he told in Luke chapter 16, he says this in verse 10, whoever can be trusted with very little can also be trusted with much, and whoever is dishonest with very little will also be dishonest with much. And Jesus is saying, your character, you determine, even with the little things, how much you can be trusted. And that applies to our parenting as well. If we start when they're preschoolers, they can tell us anything. They can share anything they want to with us. If we can be trusted with some of the things that we look at and go, that is not that big a deal. But we listen and we tune in and we let them share. Guess what? They're going to feel more willing and more able to share some of the bigger things as they get older. If we're willing to even share some of our own mistakes and where we've messed up. And say, man, I know what you're struggling with. That's hard. Here's how, man, I failed when I did it, and I don't want that for you, and let's figure out how to do this better. We need to create trust with us and our kids so that they're willing to share with us. And the more that I create a place of trust, the more my kids are going to trust me. And if I'm sitting here this morning going, I don't know why my kids don't trust me, it may be because I haven't created an environment that they feel safe to trust me in. Does that make sense? Generate trust with your kids. Number 3, set some boundaries. Set some boundaries. Don't say yes to everything. I want to be really careful about this. Parents, it is not your job to be your kid's best friend. And I know I just offended a handful of people in here at least. That's not your job. Now, do we want to create love and a relationship where they can share with us? Yes. But it's not your job just to go along with whatever they want to do and do whatever it takes for them to go, my parents are just so cool, they let me do anything. That's not your job. Your job is to help them become good adults. And sometimes that means setting boundaries and saying no and having rules and having consequences when those rules are broken. Now, I'm not going to get into this morning what the consequence should be or what the rules should be. That's for you and your family to decide. But there needs to be boundaries for our kids. There was a time years ago when I used to be a part of a program here in Northwest Arkansas that would go into public schools with teenagers and would talk about abstinence and talk about choosing not to have sex until you got married. And one of the things that I would talk with these kids about, because they look at that and go, oh, you're just coming up with rules. You don't want us to have any fun. And I would talk about boundaries. I would talk about sometimes we have to make choices and set boundaries for ourselves. Then I would tell them the story. I would get out a fishbowl and I would say, just an empty fishbowl. And I would say, I used to have fish in here. And I would talk about this fish and what a great friendship we had and how I would take him everywhere with me. But he was always in the fishbowl. And then he got frustrated and he told me one day, I'm tired of being in this fishbowl. You get to go do whatever you want to do, and I'm stuck in this fishbowl. And so I said to him, well, I want to fix that. And so I took him out and laid him on the table. You're free. You don't have the boundary of the fishbowl anymore. Go do whatever you want to do. And what would happen to that goldfish? Yes, you can say it out loud. He would die, right? The boundary was not to be mean to the fish. I didn't have him in the fishbowl to be mean to him. I did it for his protection. I did it so that he could have a good life. There were boundaries set so that he could be blessed and not have bad things happen to him. Folks, that's what boundaries for our kids do. Now, is it possible to go over the top, go too far? Probably. We have to work on that. But we need to set boundaries. You need to have boundaries. Not for us to be mean to you and to go, I am father, I am mother, you must obey. That's not what it's about, even though we come across that way sometimes. It's about providing the safest environment that we can for our kids to grow up in. And we need to be parents who are willing to do that consistently. Solomon says, again, Proverbs chapter 22 and verse 6, train a child in the way he should go. When he is old, he will not turn from it. Set some boundaries. Get your child set in the right direction. Are they going to walk off from it? Sometimes. Are they going to go past their boundaries? Yeah. And I will even go so far to say this is not a guarantee that when your child becomes an adult, they're going to do everything exactly the way you want them to. There's a pretty good chance that they'll turn out okay if you train them as children in the direction that they need to go. Work on setting boundaries for your kids. Number 4, be on the same team. And I'm not talking about the kids. Be on the same team with the other child's parent. Maybe that's your spouse. Maybe that's your ex. But the two parents of this child need to be on the same page as far as what boundaries we set and how we interact and the things we do with these children. We need to be on the same team. That means there needs to be communication between parents about the boundaries that we set and the consequences that are going to go with them. That means that we don't talk bad about the other parent when they're not around. We don't say things like, well, you know how your mom nags about stuff. Well, you know how your dad, he always just blows up and overreacts. That's not being on the same team. We need to honor our spouses in the way that we talk to our kids about our spouses. We need to communicate ahead of time, before the situation arises, if possible, about the rules and about the consequences to breaking those rules. Be on the same page as much as you can before the situation happens. And then if something comes up and you hadn't talked about it, talk about it. Be on the same team. There's times, my boys will tell you, there's times that I will say, haven't talked to your mom about this yet, but we're going to. And we do. And then we bring the kid back in and we talk about it because we want to be on the same team. Because that's going to help not only support and honor our spouse, that's going to help create the best environment in our home. And I know it's difficult sometimes. I know it is. Especially when it's single parents. And we got to go let our child spend time with the parent that we've had our own struggles with. And as much as you can, be on the same team with that ex-spouse. As much as you can, you don't talk negatively to your child about their parent. Be on the same team as much as you can so that it creates the best environment for your child. Philippians chapter 2 and verse 2, Paul says, make my joy complete by being like-minded, having the same love, being one in spirit and of one mind. And he's talking to the church here, but it's a great principle for us as parents. Have the same mindset. Doesn't mean we say everything exactly the same. Doesn't mean we're just robots that are exactly the same, but we have the same focus and we have the same purpose. We're on the same page. And it's a blessing to everybody involved when we're on the same page together. So let's work on that together as parents, to be on the same team. Last one. Choose to love. Let's be honest. Kids give us all sorts of reasons to feel frustrated, angry, confused, hurt, worried, and the list could go on. And those are natural emotions. Those are natural ways for us to feel based on whatever situation we find ourselves in. But we don't have to live in those emotions. And we don't have to live in a lifestyle of anger and frustration and worry. We can choose to love. If you got your Bibles, your Bible app, it's going to be on the screen as well. I invite you to look at 1 Corinthians chapter 13 real quick before we wrap up this morning. 1 Corinthians chapter 13. The Apostle Paul gives a definition of love here, and he says, love is patient, love is kind, it does not envy, it does not boast. It is not proud, it is not rude, it is not self-seeking, it is not easily angered, it keeps no record of wrongs. Love does not delight in evil, but rejoices with the truth. It always protects, always trusts, always hopes, always perseveres. Love never fails, meaning love never gives up, love never quits. Here's what I invite you to do. You can do it right now. You can do it later on today. Fill in this statement with these actions. I am blank with my kids. I am patient. I am kind. I am compassionate with my kids. I'm not rude with my kids. I don't get angry quickly with my kids. I don't keep a list of my kids' mistakes. I don't bring up those mistakes again. I always try to protect. I always trust. I don't quit on my kids. You go through the list, you fill in those words. How many of those statements are true? How many of those statements might need some work? That's the challenge this morning. Above everything else, what are we doing to show our kids that we love them? To choose love over anger, to choose love over frustration, to choose grace over grudges. Choose to love your kids. It's not always easy. It's not always the natural thing to do. It's what we have to choose to do. We need to choose to love our kids no matter what. Because, as we wrap up this morning, that's what God does for us. I so appreciate the attention and you listening this morning, and I'm wrapping up. In the Old Testament, one of the prophets towards the end of the Old Testament, his name is Zephaniah. Zephaniah was a prophet of God, was given messages by God to share with his people at a time when Zephaniah had kind of grown up in a time when nobody thought a whole lot about God. Matter of fact, the people of Israel were worshiping other gods. They were worshiping different idols. They were doing ungodly things. And Zephaniah kind of grew up in that time. And he's been given these messages by God to share with God's people. And God is going through and basically listing off, here's all the things that you've done that I asked you not to do. Here's all the things you've done that have broken my heart. Here's all the things you've done that have hurt me as your father. And understand that if these actions continue, there's going to be consequences. You're going to experience hurt. You're going to experience disappointment. You're going to experience failure because we don't have the relationship that we used to have. And it's some hard things that God's people would have to hear. But in the middle of all that, in Zephaniah chapter 3, God tells his people, even though I'm frustrated and even though I'm hurt, I'll still make things better if you'll let me. I'll still stay connected with you. I still want to be your father. And I'll forgive and I'll fix this relationship. I'll make it better if that's what you want. And he says in verse 17, the Lord your God is with you. I'm not going anywhere. You keep trying to walk away from me and I'm staying right here. The Lord is with you, the mighty warrior who saves. He will take great delight in you. He will brag to people about you. He will be so thankful that you're his kids. And in his love, he will no longer rebuke you, but will rejoice over you with singing. He will wrap you up in his arms, just like a father or a mother would with their infant, and just rock and sing because they are so proud of that little thing that they have in their arms. That's how God feels about us. No matter how often we fail, no matter how often we say, God, I'll never do it again, and we go do it again. No matter how many times, how many opportunities we give God to walk away from us, God says, I love you. You're my child. So maybe that's where it needs to start today. Before we get into these parenting hacks, maybe we need to ask ourselves, what's our relationship with our Heavenly Father like? When was the last time we allowed him to wrap his arms around us and sing over us? When was the last time we allowed ourselves to hear God say, I love you so much? And in the middle of, maybe some of us in this room have completely walked away from that relationship with God. We have failed. We have made mistakes. We're embarrassed of the things we've done. My God still says, I love you. You're mine. Come home. Let's connect again. Let me wrap my arms around you and just tell you over and over how much I love you. If you don't have that kind of relationship with God, that's where you need to start. Before you fix all these other parenting things, that's where you need to start. To experience the love and the grace of a father that loves you no matter what. So that you can be better enabled to love your kids the same way. So if that's what's missing in your life this morning, we're going to stand together, we're going to sing a song together based on this scripture. about God singing over us, rejoicing over us, being so proud to call us his children. And if you have felt distant from your Father, today is the day to fix that. And we invite you to come forward and share with us. I'm ready to be a child of God. I'm ready to be a child of God again. I want that connection again. We'll help make that happen if we can. We want to help. Just come forward and let us know how. While together we stand and sing.